All right, this is Vincentt Sutton interviewing Desmond Barlow for the HBCU Radio Preservation Project. It is 1:25 on December 4th, 2025. This interview is being recorded at WEAA in Baltimore, Maryland. Could you please state your full name and what your relationship is to the radio station?
My name is Desmond Barlow. I am the Director of Underwriting and Development at WEAA.
Thank you, Desmond. So to start off, can you tell me where you were born and when?
I was born in Cincinnati, Ohio. This is on my birthday, I guess. So it was 1970.
Okay. So tell me about Cincinnati growing up. Like, what was your childhood? What did you hear? What did you smell? What were the sounds of Cincinnati, Ohio when you were coming up?
That's an interesting question because it was normal for me. You know, I like to say I was raised in a pretty suburban lifestyle. I had to mow lawns and all that kind of stuff. Product of a divorced home, but my father still coached the little league teams. Took us to bowling and all that good stuff. So it was a really calm and functioning sort of environment for me. Cincinnati's an interesting place. It's part of the Great Migration, I would say, and it's. I outgrew it after a while, but when I think back on it, it was just it was a good way to grow up. I mean, I didn't want for much. I had a supportive family. I had a lot of good things around me. I had a sister that I couldn't stand growing up that I absolutely loved. And she just sent me money, so I like her a little bit more right now. We had a hoop over the garage, so kids would come and play in my neighborhood. It was picturesque looking back on it, because all the guys in the neighborhood would come and shoot hoops in my driveway because my father was a big basketball player. He had a scholarship to Ohio U, but left after his freshman year to come home and make money to help his mother and father because his father gotten sick, and but he was an athlete. He was a better athlete than I ever was. So that was a big part of us growing up, sitting around and eating snacks and watching football, or eating snacks and going fishing. My father was a really cool dude. So my mother was the loving one. Everybody respected her and loved her. And it's funny, when I got grown, we're in our late 20s, early 30s, and we're having to get together. And she can still check my friends, and they're all, a foot taller than her. She, you watch your mouth in my house. So she was always that mother in the neighborhood. So, and my father was that father in the neighborhood because when he passed, all of my friends came out, and it was really touching, really cool. I didn't see the things about Cincinnati that are unappealing until I got older, which I thank them for that. But I did see a lot of the good things about Cincinnati's a great town. It really is.
Yeah.
I feel like I grew up in an ideal situation. I'm sure if I thought back on it, there were some things that probably weren't great, but for the most part, it made me what I am, and that might not be good evidence, but yeah.
No, but looking back on how we grow up, it's always, we see things a little differently, or we look at it through a nostalgic lens, and we see our childhood like, oh, these were all these good things. You mentioned the Cincinnati being a space for Great Migration. Where are your grandparents from?
Well, my grandparents were from Cincinnati as well, but before that, we traced our family tree back to 1856, if I'm not mistaken.
Okay.
So my family's from South Carolina and Georgia. Still have a lot of family right outside of Atlanta. Yesterday was my cousin's birthday, and I didn't call him. So he always beats me to the punch and calls me first. But he's in Georgia, and we still have family reunions there and all that good stuff. Most people are either in Cincinnati or Georgia at this point, but South Carolina first, Georgia second. I can tell you a story about my last name too, but I think that was part of it, right? Had an uncle that moved to Detroit, got a job, and everybody else decided to just try and do that sort of thing. That's a great uncle, and I think that's where the migration came from. My father worked for Ford, the Ford assembly plant, for 40 years and 40 days. So he started out on the assembly line and ended up in management, which wasn't easy to do because he didn't have a college degree. But he did it. And my grandfather the same. My grandfather, my mother's father, joined the Navy during World War II.
Mm-hmm.
And then when he came back, had his little struggles with finding a job because he found a job at General Electric manufacturing plant where they manufacture jet engines. The story my grandfather always liked to tell me, he said when the guy interviewed me, he said, "Why should I give you the job?" And my grandfather said, it was a white man, he said, he looked me straight in the eye and said, "If you give me this job, I will someday to have your job." And the guy laughed at him, but he still hired him, and probably a decade and a half later, they promoted him to that guy's job. And the first thing he did was hire his wife. Because my grandmother and my grandfather worked for General Electric. But that was part of that migration, right?
Yeah.
And we'd still go back. And, more on my father's side, we'd go back to Georgia growing up. Those trips were kind of brutal because we'd always drive, but and we'd all get stuffed in the car. But it kind of kept me connected to that side of the family.
Got it. So with being connected to, I guess more so your father's side of the family, where do you hear those stories, those familial stories? Is it, you mentioned the family being from Georgia, South Carolina. Was your mom's family from South Carolina?
My mom's family, where was my mom's family? The Wilcoxes were from Georgia as well, but I don't think they were close to the city. I believe so. But it's my father's side that has the deep roots and the super connectivity. My mother's side were mostly based in Cincinnati.
Okay.
Even, I can remember my great-grandmother. She was about 95 years old when I was probably 6 or 7. She was scary looking to me because she was 95 years old, and she was always in a rocking chair, right? And she was sitting by the window, so I couldn't always see her face, and I'm knee-high to a grasshopper. So when you have that level of generations, and there were 3 generations probably under that roof, because she had a couple of daughters, a daughter and a granddaughter that lived. A daughter and a granddaughter that lived with her. So that was for me, that was that family. But my father's side would always, try and get back down to Georgia, and my father's uncle, my great uncle, had a farm down there and all that good stuff. So I would go down there and get dirty and play. It seemed huge when I was a little kid.
Yeah.
When I went back as an adult, I'm like, this place was tiny. I thought this was a huge farm. But he ended up selling the farm off, and they developed around it. So
okay,
they kept the house, but the farm was gone. So I don't know how I feel about that actually. But
I mean, we've seen this rescission of land from Black families all over. It's unfortunate that he did, I wouldn't say lose, but the family lost that larger acreage of land.
Yeah. What's I think part of the reason was he had one son, and that son is playing baseball. My cousin Donald, and Donald traveled. He played more in Japan than he did in the U.S. So it didn't make sense for him to try and maintain a house in Georgia when he was in Lord knows what part of Japan. And then when he came back, he bought the house, but they had sold off some of the land. So,
okay.
Yeah, it's just one of those, like you said, one of those stories that you probably hear all the time.
Yeah. And you mentioned your sister. So what's what's your sister's name? And then what's your age gap and your relationship like?
My sister's name is Nicole, and she's 4 years older than me. You said, what is the relationship like?
Yeah.
It's good. growing up, she always felt like she was more mother than sister, which would always create clashes.
Yeah.
And I was smaller than her. When we would have disagreements, it turned into a brawl because I would stand up for myself.
Yeah.
And she would beat me up because she was bigger than me. And I would take her dolls and slam them up against poles in the basement, and their heads would go flying. So it was just that sibling rivalry.
Absolutely.
And then, she tried that until I was about 12, and I was taller than her, and then we ended that pretty quickly. And when I had turned 21 or 22, we realized that, we can hang out. We had similar friends because we went to the same high school, of course. We were 4 years apart, so my friends liked her friends because they were older women. So, we would party and hang out together. And we had similar senses of humor because, of course, we came from the same people. So,
yeah.
And that's kind of how it's been ever since. So she's come in to town for Christmas, and that's been a tradition because her and my daughter are like thick as thieves. So
nice. I can relate being the younger brother, having those moments where you finally get to stand up for yourself physically.
Mom, I ate her.
Exactly. You mentioned your house being the place where everybody came. Were there any other places in the community that were like gathering spaces where, that's where the community, that's where the neighborhood went?
Definitely. There was Woodlawn Pool. Every summer, all summer, we'd walk down. If the weather was right, we'd walk to the pool and stay there all day. Like I said, I lived in the burbs. I was very fortunate, and to be in walking distance from a community pool is still there. And my best friend's sons are now lifeguards there and stuff like that. So there was another house that was a gathering place. My best friend, his mother was the mayor of the town for 30 plus years. So she had a community house, and she had 6 kids. My best friend, he's the youngest, and his older brother, he's another one of my best friends, is just 1 year older. So everybody hung out on their porch, right? It's at different times. There were a few houses like that in the neighborhood where you just hang out. And then we were kids, and we were kids of the 80s. We hung out in the streets. Right?
Latchkey kids, yeah.
Bike riding and I remember setting off fireworks on 4th of July in the streets and all that good stuff. So there were a few houses like that. We would play football in the street, of course, which now thinking back was just kind of dangerous, but nobody ever got hurt. Like, you get scraped, but that was about it. So it was a good neighborhood. It was just a good place to grow up back then. I don't know what it's like now. I've been back, but there are no kids outside because no kids don't go out anymore. It's weird, but it was a good place to grow up. And then, we had the football fields and the baseball fields, so we were always hanging out there. And Dairy Queen wasn't too far, so if we won a game, my father would buy ice cream, or any of the coaches would buy ice cream at Dairy Queen. It was, it was like a sitcom.
Yeah,
looking back on it.
Very picturesque.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. So walk me through, I guess, like your time in school. What about school was an interest to you? Just walk me through that. I
told a friend of mine that all of my report cards said the same thing. Desmond's pretty bright if he don't only apply himself. So school for me was just like, that's where I had fun. That's where my friends were. That's where I, played football, played basketball, ran track. I mean, it was just anything to hang with my friends. So for me, it was great. There are a lot of people that, that became my core. So a lot of those people I try to reach out, I try to stay in touch with, whatever way I can. As far as education, it's weird. Okay, so this is my weirdo story. It's not a weirdo story. It's a normal kid story. The television station that played Popeye was Channel 19. And Channel 19 was in our neighborhood. It was on the outskirts, but it was in our neighborhood. So we drive by it on the way to the highway all the time. And all I see was this building that said 19, WXIX 19. And I thought Popeye lived there. And I'm 5, 6, 7 years old, whatever it was. And I just thought I didn't think he lived in my box. I thought he lived at that station because I connected the dots. And it made me fascinated with media. So it kind of started there.
Okay.
Tim Reed, the actor, who used to be a professor here, I'm not sure if he still is, played Venus Flytrap at a radio station called WKRP in Cincinnati. And when I met him, I said, "You're kind of the reason I'm in radio." This was the late 70s, early 80s, and there's Venus Flytrap, a black dude on the radio. And I loved the show because it was about Cincinnati, and they would show Cincinnati, and it still makes me nostalgic if I see a clip. But it once again, I'm like, loving media. So radio, TV, movies, I consumed media early. So for me, school was just kind of like, yeah, I have to go. My friends are there. I'm going to have fun, with my friends. In high school, especially, my junior and senior year, I had all my credits wrapped up because I did plenty enough to wrap my credits. And I just kind of took it easy. And because I had the classes where I could. So that was when I really had fun and came into my own. There was one particular class that I absolutely loved. And it was my freshman year of high school, and that was my photography class. Mm-hmm. And I went into it just wanting to have a nice elective. And the teacher and I kind of bonded, and he trusted me. There were juniors and seniors in the class, but he trusted me to mix the chemicals when he had to go out. And after that, I was just like, okay, I'm Mr. Staub. I'm going to ride with him. And he passed away the summer after my freshman year. Oddly enough, he passed away. He was painting his house, fell off the ladder, and hit an electrical line.
Jeez.
So I'm just like, whoa. So after that, I didn't take the class anymore, but I still love photography. I still do. But once again, visual, creative.
Yeah.
It's always been kind of a staple for me. Anything I can create from scratch, I'm loving it. So when I graduated from high school, I wanted to go into communications, and I was thinking about either film. It didn't matter to me, really, truthfully.
Yeah.
It could have been filmmaking, it could have been radio, it could have been TV. It just, media always had me. I always knew that there was something about it. And I deviated away from it later on, but they got back to it. But it was always there for me as a choice I really wanted. So anything having to do with any sort of creativity, those are the memories that are burned in my mind.
Okay. So I do want to put a pin in that because I want to come back to the fact that you pursued media after high school. But I do want to kind of go back through like your childhood and adolescence and tell me, Popeye, Venus Flytrap, what else drew you to media? Like what was the radio station in the household? Like what was that? Was there anything on the radio that was like that I want to do that?
It wasn't that I wanted to do that. I just enjoyed it.
Okay.
WDAL was a station out of Dayton that we could get, and Dayton's probably a 50-minute drive, but it's one of those stations that's been around forever. But I still remember it, right? And we had the stereo in the front room, so it was always on. So it felt like it was always on WDAL during the week. And then, I remember laying down in front of a speaker as a little kid and just listening to WDAL. I remember, wow, you just brought back a memory. I remember I was out of school for something. May have been a teacher service day or snow day or something. And I called the radio station. And I want to say it may have been WDAL, but it may have been the other station, which I'll talk about in a second. But and I kept calling and kept calling and I kept calling. And I kept requesting Pass the Dutchie. And he finally played it, and I'm doing what you did back then, which put your box to the speaker to record it, because I didn't have money to buy it. And I'm gonna have to download that song now. Because it was a terrible song, but I really liked it. I mean, now looking back, I was like, that's a terrible song, especially for a 13-year-old. But
You're gonna have to introduce me to the song.
yeah, Pat, and it was I can't think of the name of the band, but it's Pastor Dutch, and it was the first time I'd heard anything that sounded like reggae.
Okay.
So I had like a little reggae feel, and they were all kids that were singing the song. Pastor Dutch to the left hand side. So I think that was WDAO, and then probably when I was around 8 or 10 years old, Cincinnati, one of the radio stations turned into an R&B station. That was, we called it the Wiz, 101.9 at the time. And that was like, everyone was just super excited, and people got to know the owner. And it was, to me, it just never felt like, it didn't feel like I was connected to the radio stations. I was just connected to what came out of the speakers.
Mm-hmm.
Right? Always loved music. Didn't really know I loved music until I started trying to buy music. I got a story for that too. But one of my old bosses used to say, radio is the wallpaper to your life.
Mm-hmm.
That's what it was. He said, it's always there and you only notice it when there's a problem. And that's kind of how radio has always been for me. It's always been in the background as a part of my life, whatever I was doing. I'll usually have music playing as I got, as technology has gone on. I'll listen to podcasts as well, which is why we started a podcast network here. But I insisted on it. And but it's always been kind of the wallpaper to my life.
Yeah.
WDAO and I don't even remember what the Wiz's call letters was, just the Wiz.
Yeah.
So yeah. I didn't think about working there because I didn't think about working as a kid.
Yeah.
And then I got older, and that's when I started to think I definitely wanted to do something in media. And at the time when I had that thought, it was kind of research, or I guess a resurgence of Black folks in media. So it was like late '80s TV.
Yeah.
You have the mid to late '80s. You had all the MTV things coming up about, and Prince, Michael Jackson, hip hop.
Yeah.
So it's just like, I can be in media.
Okay.
I don't think I made that connection. I always felt like it was just like whenever I thought about a career, my father was like, you should be a lawyer. And I'm like, I kind of want to go into entertainment. You can be an entertainment lawyer. And I'm like, I can't sit still and read that much, Dad. And he finally understood. It took him a while, but he finally understood. So I never thought about anything else. I really didn't. I just kind of felt like I would always work in media. And whenever I leave media for another job, I always come back. I need just to stick with it. And that's not a bad thing, because when I leave media, I come back with new, fresher ideas. So it's like a sabbatical, but yeah, it's in my blood now.
So the radio being the wallpaper to your life, was TV also kind of like another portion of that wallpaper, or was it like, no, radio is it for me?
TV was not quite wallpaper because it was more active for me.
Okay.
Like I said, I love me some Popeye growing up. I love the Super Friends. Justice League is what they started being called later. I remember rushing home to watch that. I remember loving 8 o'clock to roll around because your favorite shows would come on, that sort of thing. I even recently went back and watched, matter of fact, I haven't finished it yet, and started watching a TV show from the late 70s called Soap. Because I watched it. I wasn't supposed to be watching it because it came on at like 9:30. And I was supposed to be in bed, but I would always stall because I knew everybody else in the house would watch it. My mother knew what I was doing, but she just kind of let it. Go take your bath or whatever it was. And I'm like, well, I have to use the bathroom. And I slowly walked to the bathroom so I could watch the show. And when it came to reruns, I watched it again, that sort of thing. So now I'm watching it for a third time. Because that was like one of my favorite shows. It was just, are you familiar with it?
I'm not.
Okay. So that's the show that introduced the world to Billy Crystal.
Okay.
He played a gay character, which was groundbreaking in 1977. They dealt with I didn't realize it till like 6 months ago. They dealt with every controversial topic that came about in the late 70s. So they dealt with baby possession, because that was like the movies, that was the Exorcist movie. They dealt with interracial couples. They dealt with kidnapping because of Patty Hearst. And they did it with comedy, like it was a sitcom.
Yeah.
So it was really over the top. And at the time, and of course, gay couples. And at the time, it was just like, oh, this is just a risque show. But now I'm looking back and I'm like, oh, they were trying to tackle a topic. And maybe that's what drew me to it, was that the fact that it wasn't like that. It wasn't like Happy Days with Ron Howard, where it was just mundane. They were actually trying, and it was funny. It's still funny to me. So yeah, that was like, it was appointment viewing because you almost had to. Just my daughter's on demand now, but back then, if you missed it, you missed it.
Yeah. So I want to circle back to something that you said, and kind of going back to this idea of the wallpaper. Mm-hmm. You said you had a story about loving, or you were always in love with music, but you didn't know how much until you went to buy your own music. So I want to circle back to that and let you tell that story.
There's a band called the blues band called the Robert Cray Band, and in like 83 or 84, he released an album called Strong Persuader. I don't have a job. I was 14, and I don't know. You know what? I know where I heard the song. I heard the song the first time on Entertainment Tonight, and I was like, "Whoa, what is that?" Whenever I hear a new genre growing up, I was like, "Whoa, what is that?" Right? So my friends all thought that I was nuts because it's blues, and I loved it. And I'm like, I want it. Like I wanted, and that was one of the things. One of the first pieces of music I remember actually wanting to buy, but I didn't have any money, so I decided to shoplift. But
hopefully, there's no statute of limitations.
But I go and pick it up. It's a store called Gold Circle, which no longer exists. I go and pick it up and I slide it in my pocket. And I'm walking out and just guilt washes over me like nobody's business. So I take it out and I just like slide it into a stack of clothes. And I'm walking towards the exit and the security guard pops out and he catches me. And luckily I had put it down. He knew that I had stolen it, but he didn't see me put it down. So he's like, and I'm like, I don't have it. And he couldn't keep me. But I was just like, okay, that was stupid. Never doing that again. But when I got money, I went and bought it. I scared myself straight, basically. But, I went and bought the cassette. And since then, I bought it on every other form that I've had. And I bought quite a few of his CDs. And I always missed his concert until like last fall. And seeing the concert was just like, wow, this dude is still in his 70s, just hell of an entertainer. So, and it was just an intimate little venue. And I was by myself because I was able to only get one ticket. And I was happy as a pig in slop because it just like that, it's that music, and live music. Oh, yeah, it's like the best. So, and I bet, and somebody that's really good at that sort of thing, I like all kinds of music. And was kind of the start of that for me, is just because my mother and father played music. I'm actually named after a jazz musician, Paul Desmond. So my father's idea. So music has always been a part of my life, and but they played what they grew up on, what they liked. My mother would play, and I told my owner staff here all the time, stop playing the OJs early in the morning because it makes me want to clean. Because that's what my mother would do every Saturday morning at 10 o'clock. She'd turn on the OJs and we'd have to get out of bed and clean up. So whenever they play the OJs around here in the morning, I go and I'm like, you're killing me. And they laugh at me, but because it's just ingrained, right? You talk about being a wallpaper of your life, that's one of those memories where it's like, and I hated the OJs because it always reminded me of cleaning until I got into my 20s. And I was like, All right, she was on something. This is pretty good. So, my first concert was on Earth, Wind, and Fire. And, okay, Earth, Wind, and Fire in the 80s isn't Earth, Wind, and Fire of today, of course. They had the costumes and everything, but this was a time where they had their concerts choreographed by Doug Henning, the magician. So I'm 12 years old. It was a part of my Christmas present was to go to a concert. I think my parents did that so that they could go. But my mother bought me a new pair of jeans, Jordache jeans, and we went to the concert. And I'm watching these guys play, and they're in crazy costumes, and then they disappear into the stage and pop up somewhere else because they had magic in it, because that's kind of what their whole magic, they say in the song, mysticism and we're religions. So they put that into the show. Later on, I saw Justin Timberlake do it, and it was still pretty cool. But it was just like, mind was blown, right? So from that point on, I loved live music. So the breadcrumbs were always there to lead me to radio. And I actually thought I would leave radio and go to TV or go to film or something else because it would just be sexier. And I was just like, I kind of like radio. It got in my blood. I'm surrounded by music. I'm surrounded by celebrities coming in to be interviewed. It was just like, this is cool. So yeah, that was sort of the wallpaper. That started with me telling you I was a 14-year-old. But I was scared straight.
You scared yourself straight. So moving out of that space, I want to touch on going off to school. Media is in the blood. It's there. Music is the wallpaper. Where did you go off to college from Cincinnati? Because you said you felt like you outgrew Cincinnati. Was that the point that you were like, okay, this is not enough for me?
Actually not. So you want the whole education story?
Let's do the whole education story.
So in high school, like I said, did enough to get by C's, because I could do my homework on the bus. It was all easy for me. I don't want to brag, but it was just easy for me. So I do my homework on the bus. I get C's. I'm happy. I would get B's and A's when I really wanted to. The classes I didn't, I rarely got a D or an F. Rarely. They were there every now and then. But C's were good enough for me because my parents were just like, you're going to learn one way or the other. They weren't really tough on me. And they knew that I wasn't just a knucklehead, right? So my guidance counselor tells me, in high school, you might want to think about trade school, and that pissed me off. I'm going to college. What are you talking about? She was like, with these grades, you may not get into college. And that was always the scare tactic for a kid. And then I took the SATs, and I was in the upper 10th percentile, and they were like, oh, you can't go to college. So I was like, nobody's been preparing me for college. Where should I go? And my best friend said, why don't you come with me? I'm going to Wright State, which is in Dayton. Bad mistake. Wright State felt like the 13th grade. So I did a year there. And the last day, some guys who headed out for me jumped me, and we had a fight. My friends came in and helped me, so it really wasn't that big of a deal. So I was like, I'm not coming back here. So then I got back home. My father said, hey, there's two places they'd have scholarships. I did get into other colleges other than Wright State, but I decided to follow one of my best friends at the time, to Wright State. He was my roommate at the time. So when I got back, my father said, there's some scholarships that you can get just because you're my kid. You can get a scholarship at North Carolina A&T or Louisville, because those are two of the schools that have, that are kind of in your wheelhouse radar. And I was like, okay. So I looked at those two schools. I applied for both. They both accepted me. But I had a cousin who had gone to A&T, and he was like, go. And I'm like, done. So I visited, and I'm like, this is Shangri-La, Wakanda, whatever you want to call it. And I got down to A&T in 91, and it was so much fun. It was so great. So then I started getting all A's and B's because I enjoyed being there. And I applied myself, as my teachers always tell me. and I got into their communications program. And their radio station is still, to me, one of my favorite radio stations of all time. And at the time, it was just, every song they played I loved. So I knew that I could work at the radio station. It was a student radio station, kind of like what WEA is, where they had professionals, mix of professionals back then and students. But you had to take a practicum course, and I never got into the practicum course. There was a wait list. But I was able to take all these great communications courses, and it never bored me. It was always fascinating to me. So that was part of the draw for me, is it naturally spoke to me, just that whole line of the communications education. And in '93, I got in a car accident. It was my fault, and it kind of spiraled. Grades started to drop because I was trying to fix everything, and it was just like, okay, I can't do that. I ended up with a roommate. I love the guy, but his girlfriend was always at our apartment, and it was just like, it was like a perfect storm of chaos.
Yeah.
And one day I was working 2 jobs and going to school because I just didn't want to take money from my parents. I don't know why. Just looking back, I should have asked for everything. But I had that black male pride. So,
yeah.
I worked at the Gap in the morning, stocking, and then at Belt department stores after class. So I was working from 6 to 10 in the morning, and then from 6 to 9:30 in the evening, and had class in the middle and homework after that. And I was still getting pretty good grades. So I was like, okay, I can handle this. But as things started to spiral out of control with the car accident and the roommate situation, and we had moved in, this guy named Greg and I had moved in together, and I was sleeping on lawn furniture because one of my friend's mother had loaned me some cushions to sleep on until I got a bed. And I was just like, this is just crazy. And I made rent, and I could have probably gotten a mattress if I had asked my parents, but I didn't. And I just felt like that was just, I felt like, what? Even at the time, I knew this is going to make me tougher, and it did. But then I come downstairs one day, and my roommate and his girlfriend are on the living room floor, butt naked asleep, both of them. And I just step over them and keep walking. And then I go into the kitchen, and I'm an iced tea addict. I'm just addicted to iced tea. And they drank all my iced tea, and I was like, that's it. That's the straw that broke the devil's back. And I was just like, you know what? God is telling me to go home. So I did. And I went back to Cincinnati, and I was instantly hating it, right? And that friend whose mother was the mayor, I was talking to her one day, and she said, hey, Cincinnati Public Schools just hired. I think they were starting at $13 an hour back then. And I said, okay. So I applied. I was still working at the Gap, but I applied for Cincinnati Public Schools and got the job. I was 22 when I got the job, and I turned 23 right before, or right after I had started, right? So I'm 23 years old working in high school, and didn't dislike it because it was an inner city school, and the kids were fantastic. The parents were terrible. The parents were awful, but the kids were fantastic, right? So I didn't mind working in that environment, but I still started taking classes because I was like, I know where I'm supposed to be. This is not it. So I'm taking classes here and there at University of Cincinnati. And then 5 years flies by like it's nothing, right? And I'm like, okay. But I've had about enough of this. So I was thinking, what do I do next? Because I'm only taking one class at a time for about 3 years, the last 3 years that I was with Cincinnati Public Schools. And the principal of the high school, because I was working in a high school, retired, and they brought in a new principal, and I was like, that's it. So I told myself, I had a couple of mentees, and I said, as soon as my mentees graduate, I'm going to quit, and I'm going to retire, and I'm going to go back to school full time. So that's what I did. I made sure they got the graduation, and then I quit the next day and started back full time, and I said, I'll figure it out after that. Um, here's a really interesting story. I need to reach out to this person. So by this time, I'm 30. I'm 29. And my birthday's in November. And on my 30th birthday, I was depressed because I wanted to go away for my 30th birthday. And I'm with my friends at a party, and I am just drunk. And this girl walks up behind me and says, "Do you want to go steady?" And I turn around and she's gorgeous. I'm like, hell yeah. And I started dating her, and I tried to force the relationship to work the way it was supposed to work because I met her on my 30th birthday. That's an omen. And I realized years later that the only reason she was in my life was to tell me to get an internship. Because after she said get an internship at a radio station, I did. I stopped seeing her almost very soon after that. And that internship got me out of Cincinnati because I was working at a radio station. I'll tell you about that station. I'm an intern at a radio station. And instantly I'm like, oh, this feels like home. And it's a pop top for you. Once again, I'm introduced to a new brand of music that I wasn't accustomed to. And it just felt wonderful, right? So when I graduated from University today, so I was a C student, but I was dean's list all the way through college. And I was very proud of that. And I would annoy my family because I was like, I'm on the dean's list. And they would all laugh, I'm on the dean's list. And it just, So when I graduated, I wanted to start working there. So here's the story about that station. Station is Q102 in Cincinnati. Well-known station. And I got the internship in the early summer, late spring, right? The guy who was in charge of the interns knew me, but I didn't know him. And the reason he knew me was because he went to church with my aunt. My aunt was a beauty queen. He's like, he told me later, he was like, you were going to get the internship because I knew your aunt. I was like, and I know your father. But we didn't know that, And his father actually worked with me. And he was like, your aunt's fine. I was like, is that why you got me to give me an internship? He was like, yeah. Because I know your aunt. And I've had a crush on her forever. I told her, she was like, yeah, whatever. He was married, so it was just like, that's how the ice had been broken because my aunt was fine according to him. So I'm interning, I'm hustling, and there's 12 interns. And one of the guys that was on the payroll as a promotions assistant, driving around doing the promotions, gets drunk while we're at one of the events and crashes and wrecks the company van. So they fired him instantly. And out of all the people, it's a top 40 station, I'm the only black intern, but they hired me because I was working harder than I came from hardworking mindset. So they hired me after only 30 days as an intern. I probably shouldn't have graduated because I didn't finish the internship program, but that was because I was hired. And throughout my internship, my boss at the time, a guy named Scott, who's now I would consider a friend, and two of the on-air personalities. One is now a PD of a country station in Cincinnati, and the other one's off doing photography. But both of them kind of took to me. So the four of us we were all around the same age, even though I was an intern, and I'm in school, and we all just kind of were chummy, really chummy, And now we still communicate, we're still friends, we still do some fantasy football things together. So it always felt really good, even though I'm the only black guy, right? So, which I always felt like, so what? I can outwork you folks, so no big deal. Yeah. I belong here. And they made me feel like I belong there. So when I graduate in 2003, I'm 32, going on 33. And I want a job at Q102. I had done a little on air. I had done promotions. I had done, I said, the only thing I haven't tried is sales. I'll give sales a try. Because the on air side of it was fun to me while you were in the studio. When you got out of the studio, it seemed really kind of creepy. And what I mean is, people that I knew were listening, or the people that I knew were listening, and they would come up to me and say things, and I'm like, what? And I didn't remember what I had said, but they did. Sorry, I'm gonna keep sliding back. And I had a class called Interviewee at University of Cincinnati. My professor, I go to him right as the class is beginning, and I say, hey, I have an opportunity to be on air in the mornings, 3 days a week, as a part of this ensemble cast on Q102. And he's like, great. I'm like, here's the problem. It starts, the show ends at 8:50. Your class starts at 9 o'clock. I said, I either have to drop the class or you have to let me be late. He was like, be late. I said, I'll sit up in the corner. I'll try not to disturb. He said, no problem. So, this is really kind of, I swear it sounds like a sitcom. So I'm on the show, we're yucking it up. It's just a yuck fest, right? And we're taking calls and we're answering emails and just discussing all these different sorts of things. And one day, I leave the studio and hop into the station van because I have to go somewhere after class in the station vehicle. So I'm driving this. Imagine the Mystery Machine just with Q102 on the side, right? Just colorful as hell. And I parked the van near class. So I'm jumped out of a colorful van, run into class, and I sit into my little corner seat in the front. And he walks up to me, the professor, and he flicks my cheek. And he says, 2 weeks, huh? And I was like, whoa, what was that? And then it dawned on me, oh, this morning we were talking about how long it takes to grow a beard. And I hadn't shaved in 2 weeks. But I had forgotten all about it. But yet this guy comes up to me, and I didn't mind. Once I figured it out, I'm like, oh, he's a cool professor. He's letting me do this. And getting an A in the class. I loved his class. His class was very, very good. And but it was just like, and then I turned around, and everyone's like in on it, right? Because they had all listened. And they knew what I was doing. Nobody had ever said anything to me. And I didn't know that they were listening, but they were listening. And I felt like a great big, I'm like, I can't do anything now. I have to make sure that I was keep my nose clean. I can't talk bad about any of these people. And it just was like, this is a bridge too far for me. So then that's when I decided, like, okay, so what else can I do? So I tried to get into promotions in a couple of different places. I interviewed in Pittsburgh, I interviewed in Augusta, Georgia. I actually got offered a job in Augusta, Georgia, but the guy told me I couldn't start for 6 months. And I was like, can't do it. It was the hottest place I'd ever been in my life, too. I got in Pittsburgh. I had interviewed like twice, and I went to interview the general manager on the third interview. And when I walked in, he looked like somebody just kicked his dog. And he just had a mean look on his face. And I was like, I'm not getting this job. Before I opened my mouth. And I didn't. So it was just one of those, he was in a bad mood. And so I was like, all right, let me think about sales. And I go to sales manager at the time, this guy named Rory Flynn. And I say, I'd like to at least examine whether or not sales would be for me, right? And the reason I thought that was because like I said, the promotions manager at the time was, he and I were really cool. And I would go on these promotions, and the sales guys would never show up. They would just show up and renew the contracts. And I'm like, they're renewing these contracts because I'm here and I make sure that everything goes swimmingly, right? We never had, I think we get wild. We had bottomless tabs everywhere we went. And the reason was so we could buy all the girls shots, so they would party. It was just, I lost my tolerance for alcohol. It was a lot of fun. Yeah. And it was a lot of alcohol, and it was just like I gained probably 20 or 30 pounds. It was just ridiculous. It was the most fun I ever had being on the payroll. but I was also helping these salespeople renew these contracts. They wouldn't even show up. They didn't show up. They didn't have to. And I thought, well, why am I feeding their pockets? I should do this too. So I asked Rory if I could, apply for sales. Now, in 2002 at the time, maybe 2003, sales was 100% commission.
Mm-hmm.
So you give people jobs that they either sink or swim. But I did a ride along with a couple of his salespeople, put on my best suits and all that good stuff. And when it came time, after that, I'm like, okay, well, I'm sure he'll give me a shot because, why wouldn't you? I don't cost you anything, 100% commission. And then I looked at the staff and I'm like, I would be the first black face he probably ever hired. And he avoided me for a little while. And I'm thinking, there's no way he doesn't hire me, right? So one day he's walking by, I'm like, Rory. Yeah? Comes into my, I got sharing office with the person, comes in my office. I said, any news on the sales job? And he said, I'm actually kind of looking for somebody with a little bit more experience. So, okay. He said, I'm not really sure you can tell the story. Really? So I've been working here for 2+ years. I've helped all your people. Is what I'm thinking. I didn't say anything. I wasn't going to confront him because his decision had already been made. I said, okay. I was heated. It's the most angry I've ever been. So after I calmed down, I went to his boss. And I said, look, Rory will not hire me because he's looking for someone with a little more experience. I said, if you have a friend that will hire me with no experience in sales, let me know. And that guy, who was a lot more even-keeled, said, sure. He said, and then I came back to him a little while later. He said, I have a friend in D.C. that is taking over a station there, or a station group there. He said, I can give you a name and number to call, and you can try and get yourself an interview. I said, great. So I started calling to D.C. from Cincinnati to try and get an interview. And I did. And it took me maybe 6 weeks. So from August to December, I'm just miserable. Because, oh, by the way, they kept me part-time. So because I was in charge, because my boss, Scott, realized he could turn everything over to me, he did. And that meant I worked a lot of hours, which was great because it was a decent paycheck. But when November rolls around, I'm at max hours. And they tell me, you have to cut your hours. But I was making a schedule for everyone, so I didn't cut my hours. And then he forced me to cut my hours. And I'm like, it's almost Christmas. What are you talking like? So I was just like in a bad place. But I got the interview scheduled for DC. And my aunt, the fine one, loaned me her car, which was a Mercedes-Benz, and said, because my car wouldn't make it, because I was broke. She gave me a couple bucks. She's like, go have your interview. She said her mechanic had told her she should put it on the open road anyway because she only drove to work. So I was doing her a favor. And I'm like, yeah, okay. So my mother got me a hotel room. And I go to interview with a guy named Jeff Hedges. And it was a normal interview, fine. Jeff Hedges was just consummate professional. I still like that dude. And he was stern and just like, but I didn't back down from him. And then towards the end, he's like, but you live in Cincinnati. And I told him, yeah, it's true. I said, but you can either give me a job or not. I'm still moving up here. And he just smiled and he gave me a job. On December 23rd, he called me to tell me I could, that I could start. And on January 4th, I moved. And I'm in the car on January 4th. And I just look in my rearview mirror and I just feel washing over me. What have I done? So I moved up here to Baltimore. I moved in with a friend of mine from Auntie. And I stayed with her for about 9 months. That was a hot mess. But we weren't dating or anything. It was just Baltimore was really Baltimorean at the time. And it was miserable. The first 9 months were miserable because I'm in radio. I'm in D.C., one of the cities I wanted to live in. And it's just hard. Sales is hard. And I was slowly trickling in business, and I didn't realize that I was doing fairly well because it didn't feel like it. And in May of that year, this is 2004, May 16th, 2004, my car gets stolen from down on South Gilmore Street. And I didn't get a paycheck for two months, but my uncle came to my rescue. And then in September of 2004, September of 2004, I moved out of that friend's house and moved in with another friend and started working for the Associated Press for their radio division. I was a regional radio executive, and that's when life took off for me. So you asked about education, but I took you a little bit past that.
No, it's good.
The odd thing is, and I said this just a couple of years ago, it finally hit me, and I said to a friend of mine, I said, I thank Rory for his racism. Because, okay, let me retract. So when I first moved to DC, I'm talking to that friend who's now program director. His name is Grover. And he's an award-winning program director, even though he's a nut. He's hilarious. And he calls me up and he says, didn't Rory tell you he was looking for somebody with more experience? And I said, yeah. He said, he just hired a guy straight out of college. I said, what does he look like? He said, normal, tall, blonde. I said, he doesn't have radio experience? He said, dude, he doesn't have job experience. This is his first job. I said, huh. I said, Grover, you know what that is, right? And he was like, racism? I'm like, yeah, Grover. Grover's married to a Korean woman. So Grover has feels like he's he gets it all.
Yeah.
He feels like he gets it all. And she's fantastic. I love her to pieces. And she's on the air. But he was like, oh, because he saw it.
Yeah.
But here, fast forward to a couple years ago, and I'm talking to somebody about how I got here, and I'm like, I thank Rory for being racist.
Yeah. Because
if not, I would have still been in Cincinnati. And like I told you, I felt like I had outgrown Cincinnati, but I didn't quite know how to get out. But then it's not racism like hang you from a tree, burning sort of racism. It's just like, he didn't think that a black guy could sell to a
white audience.
Yeah, to white business owners. Which what he didn't know is I went to an integrated high school, and half of those business owners were their sons I went to high school with, and I probably could have called on all of them, right, with no problem, because they ended up doing it for a guy named Forbeck that I grew up with, because he ended up working at the station across town. We bonded over that, but it's just kind of like, yeah. And Forbeck was like, yeah, I would have given you all my contacts, and I was just like, well, whatever. So, it was his loss. In the sense that, not me, but just in the sense that you didn't believe that the black community had businesses, because I could have done both. But he didn't give me the shot. But once I got up here, I got the shot. Once I got up here, I was given the shot. And I made the most of it. So I looked up one day, and every package, because I love the package deals that we used to sell, every package deal, save for maybe two, I had sold. And I was like, oh, I'm doing all right? And I'm working at a classic rock station. I can't tell the story at a pop top 40 station, but I can tell the story. I don't even know these songs. I don't know these people, right? But I figured it out. And I come in with a completely different vibe. And the people gravitated towards me and bought things from me. And then I get to Associated Press, and I'm selling, and I win every award that they have for sales. And it was all because Rory was in the back of my head telling me I couldn't tell the story. So I turned that racism, that negativity, yeah, it's a good word, into fuel. And it still fuels me today. I mean, people are like, oh, you're doing all this. And I'm just like, I got to tell the story. And I haven't run into him. I saw he popped up on LinkedIn or Facebook, and I thought about friending him or whatever it was. And I probably shouldn't thank him, because I don't think he was a bad guy. I just think he was thinking from a fiscal standpoint. And then I've gotten to stations here where they only send me black people. It was a sports station. And we sent me all the call-ins. all the call-ins I would get would be black people. And I'm just like, didn't you see me? I could sell more than black people. So I just started doing my own thing, and I was just like, I'm gonna overcome this too. So, which leads me to HBC radio. But radio is still very segmented in that. I mean, I get it.
Yeah.
Black music is black music, so you have black stations, you have black people that work there. But I've always said I can do more than that. So that's kind of how I've always lived it. Like I said, once again, that suburban lifestyle. I didn't feel like I was inferior. I never felt like I was inferior to anyone. So
yeah. Well, let's talk about that. Let's talk about. I mean, you went the local stations in Cincinnati, AP News. Tell me if I got my research right. FDA News, CBS, and then McClatchy, DC, McClatchy. So were all of those, you went through all of those spaces. How did you end up here at WEAA?
Excuse me. So McClatchy was my last media job before WEAA. And McClatchy is a newspaper group that owns 30 newspapers across the country. Their video lab is in DC, and I did have a little stint with Comcast right before McClatchy, so that was TV. But I don't really count that because it wasn't that long. And McClatchy was looking for someone to be a business development person with their video lab, and then they were sampling, dabbling in audio. Perfect, right? So, because I had this audio background, so they hired me, and I ended up helping to create their podcast network, and I wrote the business rules for that podcast network. The problem with that is that they did what a lot of people did, which was just hire like crazy, and the money didn't come in as fast as they hired, so they ended up laying off a bunch of people. The day that I knew that there was a problem this is an interesting story. So I'm at McClatchy. We're doing a podcast about one of our reporters in Biloxi, Mississippi. And he is a gay man. He was living in Biloxi at the time, and he wrote about being gay in Biloxi. So he won an award for one of his stories about that lifestyle in Biloxi and that general area, which isn't considered very progressive. And they created a podcast around it, and he interviewed the man who was considered, and I can't remember his name, forgive me, who was considered the father of gay marriage, right? And that they made a documentary about the father of gay marriage, and the idea came about to do a film screening about this guy's documentary, but they wanted to do it in Biloxi. I'm like, let's do it. So I kind of take the bull by the horns, and I start planning a film festival on a Sunday in Biloxi, Mississippi, in like August or June, July or August. But I'm doing it from my desk in DC. So I fly down a couple times to just check stuff out, make sure everything's going well. And my boss is like, no way, it's a success. She just didn't think it would work. And not only did I negotiate a split of the bar, that's how we make money, which no one else thought about. But I was just like, yeah, let's do that. We're going to sell some tickets. That'll help us break even, pay for everything. And then we'll make money off the bar. And that's how we did it. Ironically, that's what we're doing this week. But don't tell anybody. Yeah. But no, it was a success. Great turnout. Sold a bunch of tickets. People came from miles. They came from New Orleans. They came from Georgia because they'd heard about it. I'll be honest, it was kind of a culture shock for me. I walk in and there's all the entire, as they call it at the time, quilt bag. It was all the LGBTQT, all of the people. And it was, and I'm a straight guy, straight black guy, just like, okay, this is a new place to be. But the thing that made me most proud, I won an award for that as well. But the thing that made me most proud about that is we got I want to say it was an email about 2 weeks after the film festival. And this guy said I was considering committing suicide. He said, but because of your film festival, I met a lot of people who gave me support, and now I have a community. I'm like, dude, it was a film festival. But then I'm like, but it wasn't for him. For him, it was a lifeline.
Yeah.
And that made me feel like we could just, conquer the world. So we do this podcast network. Once again, from my desk in D.C., I get to sell staff in Charlotte. I get to sell staff in Fort Worth. I get to sell staff in Kansas City. And I said, let's do a barbecue podcast. Yo, all think your barbecue's the best. Let's do it. And I forget what name we laid on. I threw a bunch of names out there because Barack Obama's book, The Audacity of Hope, came out. I said, let's call it The Audacity of Smoke. I'm like, no. I was like, how about we do a riff on an old song and call it The Grill That I Was Waiting For. I'm like instead of The Girl I Was Waiting on.
Mm-hmm.
But we ended up on, I can't even remember the name. But we ended up on a pond of barbecue, and the food reviewers from all three cities said, "Yeah, we're all in, and we can do it remotely." And I said, "Now we have to sell it because I'm the business development guy." So I get their sales staffs involved, and instantly a travel company is like, "Consider us done. We're in North Carolina. We'll however you want to set it up. We'll do it. Here's $1,200 to get it started." I'm like, we haven't even produced an episode yet, and we have somebody. So I go to my boss. I'm excited as hell. Oh, I can't believe we've already sold one. We don't even have a proof of concept, but we've sold something. And my boss turned to me and said, "I don't even know how to cash a check." And I felt like I was 1,000 pounds. I just like, really? Like,
yeah.
3 months later, they laid off 11,000 people. It may not have been 3 months. It may have been a little bit longer than that.
Mm-hmm.
But very quickly, they laid off 11,000 people across the country. And it's like, because you don't know how to cash the check. Not to say that my idea would have saved the company.
Yeah.
But if you're not prepared to make money, what are you prepared to do? But they weren't prepared. And I was one of the people who got laid off. And I went, I was out of work for a while, and I started my little side hustle. And after a while, I said, I got to make a paycheck. My wife was very understanding, but she's tough, so she was understanding. And I worked at like I said, I always step out and come back. I went to work for a uniform company, hated it. And one day I just said, I just can't do this anymore. So I was like, something tells me I should look in Baltimore. I've never worked for a radio station in Baltimore. And instantly, WA pops up. And it's for the Director of Underwriting and Development. I was like, well, that's a pretty lofty title. I don't know if I'm qualified for that. But I applied, and Dean Wickham and Dean Jones was like, yeah, we'll interview him. And interview him. And I know that they interviewed a few other people, but they landed on me. And up until about 2 weeks ago, about 2 months ago, I thought, I'm doing a pretty good job. When the rescissions comes down, it's like, now we have to pivot. And then I realized, like, we need to make up a lot of money.
Yeah.
Maybe we weren't doing such a good job. So now we're at that point where I'm like, okay, I'm going to swing bigger. I have to swing much, much bigger. So that's how I got to WEA. And I'll be honest with you, and if Dean Wickham listens to this, and Dean Jones listens to this, I didn't think I'd get hired. It was a terrible interview. But it was COVID. It was over Zoom. No one had here quite mastered Zoom. So they had the free account, the 45-minute account.
Yeah.
So I'm talking really fast, trying to get everything in, and because the clock was ticking down.
Yeah.
And it gets cut off mid-sentence. Then I get a second interview, and there's technical issues, so it's shortened. And the sun starts setting in the bedroom because I'm doing it from the bedroom. So slowly you can't see my face. And I said, can we pause this so I can turn on the light? And Dean Jones was like, yeah, maybe you should turn on the light. I was like, there's no way I get this job. But, towards the end, they went, said, you're going to be my new director of development, of underwriting and development. I was like, really? But he and I got along instantly.
Yeah.
Dean Jones has been just fantastic to work with. So I think that was kind of it. It was just something like there was some sort of vibe there where they thought that I could handle it, and I'm trying to prove them right. At least I think I have so far. So, but I have to do more.
Understood. So you mentioned the rescission, and I want to touch on that, particularly now it being a huge kind of point of contention for public radios. How do you make that pivot? Like, how do you see WEAA kind of addressing that this is a real time situation?
The really interesting part for me is that it happened as I'm mentally wrapping my mind around us turning 50 as a radio station. So I was already thinking big swings for 50. Right now I'm thinking about a year-long celebration. I think we've talked about that offline. So for me, it was just a natural next step of, okay, we were thinking about, I was thinking about trying to do all of our development work without having fund drives or membership drives that year. Just turn every event that I can turn into a membership drive. And then the rescission packages become real. I'm like, oh, we have to go even bigger. So now I'm kicking around some even bigger ideas on top of that stuff, because the students here just like Tuesday presented me some ideas in one of the PR classes. And I'm like, oh, this is full go. We're good. We have to do this. But on top of that, I want to add some even bigger things. And I'm still trying to figure out how to do that. By the time this comes out, it hopefully will have happened. But we have to do a research piece in some form or fashion, because that's where, first of all, this university is moving towards being an R1 university. So why wouldn't we jump on board?
Yeah.
So that's going to be a big part of it for me. I think that's where the real big money will come in. But then too, we will, some of the local Fortune 500 companies that normally wouldn't come to a college-based radio station, I think they'll show up for 50th because it'll be a celebration. I've spoken with so many notable names or notable companies that have all given me verbal yeses. I haven't, they're verbals. So, but we're talking NPR, we're talking Quasi-Influence's office, of course, National Association of Broadcasting, like they're all like, we're going to do something with you. And locally, I've gotten a lot of yeses. So now I have to put it all together, which is basically what I'm going to do all this month if I can ever clear my desk off. And next year I'm going to have to shift. My deputy director is going to have to take a little bit more off of my plate, because he's much better at the underwriting side than he is in anything else. So I'm going to let him handle it. I'm going to link to his strengths. And I'm really starting to find my way around the development space. So it's like, this is perfect. So that's how it goes. I told someone just yesterday, because I was interviewed about this sort of thing just yesterday, and I said, it's chaos. The rescission packages created a bit of chaos. It's just the incoming administration created chaos for public radio and public media. And I said, out of chaos and out of rough times comes opportunity.
Yeah. So
I'm looking at it as an opportunity, not just to bridge the gap, but to make a new map, a new path. We're still going to be a public radio station. We're still going to adhere to the NPR mindset and NPR pillars. That to me is important, and not to mention the fact it's important to the people that work here, because it sets standards for the students. So it has to be a must. But now we have to lean a little bit more like a commercial station, which is where I came from. Right, it's where where I cut my teeth. Someone said to me recently that public media people feel like or think like librarians, and I was just like, wow, yeah, they're protectors of books. It's not about them. It's not about the money. It's not about human life. So it's just public money and public, and that's kind of how That's kind of how the people in the public media have always operated, like they're just protecting a library. And he had the same similar thought that I had, which is we have to be a little bit more commercial. Not in full bore, but just we have to go after things that we normally wouldn't. Not everything, things that we normally wouldn't unless we were a commercial station. Car dealerships don't really work with public media. It just doesn't, because they want to be in your face, right?
Yeah.
We're going to have to change their mind. We're going to have to bring them more to our side of the fence. And I'm using them as an example, not necessarily, but there are quite a few businesses that normally stay away from public media. And we're going to have to change their minds and bring a few of them on board because it's going to mean survival to the way of life we want to, have survived. So, I forgot what your question was. I got long-winded on it.
But it does answer, and it leads me to this next question. When you think about underwriting, particularly because you mentioned Fortune 500 companies specifically and notable names, you mentioned Infume and NPR. But when you think about Fortune 500 companies, but just in general, when you are thinking about your underwriting here at WEAA versus, the commercial stations you were working at, what goes into the decisions for those, for that underwriting?
I've been here 5 years as of 2 days ago, right? So it's always been kind of a teeter-totter for me, right? On one side of the teeter-totter is a public media underwriter. The other side is a commercial advertiser. And I've always tried, I want to live right in the middle. And that's virtually impossible right now. Like, the history of people that do public media underwriting, small businesses, here, I should say, because not everywhere, small businesses, party promoters, community-based organizations. We've done a lot with healthcare. We've done a lot with community awareness. So, things like one of our best clients is handles the PSAs for like suicide prevention, things of that sort. So we handle a lot of those heavy topics, right?
Yeah.
We don't do grand openings of furniture stores. We don't do cell phones. We don't do computers. I would love to, but historically, I don't think I know the station hasn't had it. I've looked through the list of clients going back probably 7, 8, 10 years now. Those names aren't readily there. There are a few, but they're not a ton. So we have to give them something to make them realize that this is a place that's viable for them. That they can talk to an audience that will patronize their business and appreciate their products. That's a commercial sort of mindset.
Yeah.
The public media mindset is we can't let go of the small mom and pop shop. One of the caterer for our party, and I was running around like crazy yesterday trying to get her a check, but the caterer for our monthly sustainer party next weekend was catering out of her house when I met her, right? And she donated food and catered just so she could get some exposure. So we thanked her on air. She came back, we thanked her again. Business started to roll in. That business turned into a food truck. That food truck turned into a brick and mortar building where she can cook and cater out of. So now she has a food truck and a brick and mortar commercial kitchen. And now she's looking at a space where she can do whatever she wants. She can do whatever she wants in the food space. So when I started looking for a caterer, I called all the caterers that we worked with in the past, right? I didn't want to call, the restaurant we never used or the catering company It goes with everyone, unless we had worked with them in the past. And she was one of the names that came to mind. There was a young man too whose food is, both their food is good, but he made me like some things I didn't think I'd like. So I reached out to them first, and that's kind of how we came about that. That's the public side of things, where they just show. We call them and say, "Hey, we're doing this thing. Do you want to show up?" And they'll show up, and they'll come out of their own pocket. And I mean, it's not, we wouldn't get 5-star meals, but we get food from them for this event, and that's how we would get to know them. And I cut them great deals if that's what it takes, if that's what they want to do. I have a coffee company that's gonna bring out some hot chocolate next week. This guy, once again, started small. When we met him, he had he had 2 coffee shops. Now his coffee shops are expanding. Well, no, his coffee is expanding. And he's already in Trader Joe's, and he's going to be in Food Line pretty soon. I don't know if I'm allowed to say that, but he was working on the paperwork 2 months ago. I hope it's done. But part of that, we're part of his story.
Yeah.
Because I believe we were his first live interview, right? And he's just talking about his love for the coffee and his connection to the Black community in Baltimore, because he grew up here, and that's how he picked the name. I forget what the story is. It's something about a train, freedom train. But there's a story behind the name. Everything has a story behind it that ties back to Baltimore, and he was able to tell that story on air first here. So he loves us,
yeah.
And he's about to blow up and expand, and we can't divorce from that side of it.
Yeah.
But we have to marry. We have to have 2 wives.
It's a way to look at it.
We have to have our at-home wife and our flashy wife, which will be bigger companies. But and we have to navigate that. And we can. I'm 150% positive we can do that, because the things that we'll give to the small business owner are going to be different than the things we give to the big business owner. The thing is, we can't lose sight of our North Star, which is where our bread and butter, the small business, and small business owner, and the small mom and pops. So, yeah, people think my job is easy. They really do, especially around here. But it's not. It's just not.
Yeah. I mean, it takes a lot, particularly in the way that you're speaking, especially now with the rescission. With, when, outside of the rescission part and trying to marry or have those 2 wives, and outside of having those 2 wives and making that decision, do you ever think about your underwriting as it is, like, based on the program and the listener?
On occasion. Well, on occasion. My philosophy has always been, when it comes to radio sales of any sort or form, and this that man I mentioned taught me this, Jeff Edges, it's 100% about the audience. I don't sell airtime. I don't sell shows. I don't sell hosts. I don't sell stations or call letters. I sell an audience. If you want to talk to Black men and women, because we're about 50-50, Black men and women who are over 35, who are doing fairly well financially, who are usually pretty educated, who are consumers because of where they are in life. WA is a pretty good place. And that's where I start. I've tried to spread that word around here. Forget about your show. Forget about what you're doing. Remember, think about the audience. The secret to success to this business is to make your audience happy. When you lose your audience, we're all out of work. We're talking to ourselves. So the audience is always paramount for me. Without them, I have nothing. So, yeah, on occasion, there's someone who will say, I have a jazz concert coming up. I need to be in the jazz show. That's a slam dunk. I would have done that anyway.
Yeah.
But if it's, let me think. a gala, because I'm going to try and go around the entire Monday through Friday lineup, because there are people from all walks of life in this town will go to a gala. If it's something Caribbean based, they're only going to be on Saturday. If it's something that is gospel based, church based, then yeah, I might put them in some other shows, because the Black community and church have that really strong tie together. But you're going to start on Sundays, and we'll go out from there. So yes, I do have to, with this station, and this is a first in my career, but with this station, you do have to kind of parse out the audiences by the genre, because we do so many different genres: talk, jazz, R&B, gospel, Caribbean, African world beats, Latin jazz. I love the Latin jazz shows. Again, never listened to Latin jazz till I got here. So a theme is building. So you put different things in different people, or different underwriters with different shows. But for the most part, I try and look at the audience as a whole. And we get pretty good metrics on who listens and when. There's some controversy around that, but I found it to be very accurate. So,
with that, do you ever push to market for the student audience?
Like the fifth time that's been mentioned to me this week. No. A few reasons for that, and now. My coworkers here want to get younger. When that conversation comes up, I stay quiet. I'm over the revenue side. I'm not over programming, but I do feel like my opinion on the programming side is listened to. But I stay silent on that. Getting younger is every station's goal. Mm-hmm. We'd have to get a lot younger. We have a mature audience, just given the genre that I just talked about.
Yeah.
And to try and court a college student-based audience would completely alienate the audience we have now. And that is I just say it's all about the audience. That would be suicide. It would be career suicide for everyone here. If we actually made that full-on shift, which I don't think we will, because it would just be too jarring. But there's another reason for that, right? And I was telling my wife this the other day. It's like I said, those students presented to me, and every student said, WAA is not for us. And I told them, that's on purpose. There's a couple of different reasons, but the main reason is, in my mind, this is just in my mind. I told you my first job in radio was a pop top 40 station.
Yeah.
And my friends were like, they're going to do all kind of crazy things to you. And I'm like, no, they're fine. They're good people. I had to go into a station that I knew very little about their music. I knew a little bit because at the time, that station, their tagline was all the hits without the rap. And right. And it created controversy in Cincinnati. They let the Ku Klux Klan put I should say they let Ku Klux Klan decided they wanted to put a cross on what we call Fountain Square, which is a big gathering place, and they had to allow it. But just the fact that Cincinnati is a place where that happened in the mid '90s was controversy. So it's that kind of town, right?
Yeah.
At times, I knew what they were trying to court, but I'm working there, and people are like, "How can you work for a place like that?" This is my point. They were paying me to be there, and it was still radio. If a student comes to Morgan and becomes an intern and starts working at WEAA, they don't get to choose where they get a job. The jobs will be open, and you have to be willing. You have to be able to be broad enough to work on different genres, and not be so recalcitrant to the fact of, I don't like this music, or I don't like this talk show, or I don't like this whatever, because you don't know what you don't know. So the students should come in here and it not be for them. and they should be forced to learn things that are new to them, to prepare them for real. There are not a ton of radio jobs just sprouting up every day. There are a few. Radio's a good profession. It's fun. There are perks. It's like lots of good stuff. So the jobs aren't plentiful. And when they come available, you have to take the ones that are available and work towards them. You don't get to bend the world to your will. You have to bend your will to the world sometimes. And then you have to make it your own. So that's how I approach it. Come in here, you might not like the music, get to know the music. You don't have to like it to get to know it.
Yeah.
I'm not gonna name the shows, but there's some shows that play music I don't like. I've never liked that type of music, but you wouldn't know it if you talked to me because I've gotten to know the music, and I'm like, yeah, this artist, that artist, right? So to me, it's a part of life. I would love, and eventually, while I'm here, I'm going to try and figure out a way to incorporate students more into everything about WEA, right? That's one of my goals. Very broad goal.
Yeah.
So one of the things that I did, and I said this earlier, is I created a podcast network.
I wanted to ask you about that.
So the students, first of all, to me it's a newer form of media. I think podcasts are only they're about 25 years old. But because the iPod is where it gets its name, they were making shows for your iPod, so it becomes a podcast.
Okay.
And then, excuse me, I probably need some water. And then in 2015 is when Serial hit. The first episode, ironically, was based in Baltimore. And it becomes a thing. And then everybody wants to do a podcast. Well, there have been plenty of podcasts before that. But now everybody has a podcast. Well, my thought was, I did this podcast network, and we didn't know how to cash a check at McClatchy. Let's do something here. Because it became a passion of mine as well. Because it's audio, right? So students, and this wasn't my doing, but Mikhail have the students doing podcasts. And it's usually three or so episodes, and there's anywhere from usually 7 to 10 minutes, which isn't terrible. It's great, actually. But I thought, well, this is an opportunity.
Yeah.
So I was asked to present at PMDMC about this idea. The idea basically is, let's create a Baltimore podcast network on our station. Baltimore Voices, people who create podcasts in Baltimore. They're either from Baltimore, they went to Morgan, whatever tie they have to Baltimore, they're allowed to present to us to be in the podcast network. And I will take most of them. There are a few exceptions. Anything that plays music, can't do it because we don't have the rights. Sorry. Anything that just sounds like it would be a stain.
Yeah.
Because there's some podcasts that just start off with just garbage, and it's just like instantly you're turned off by them. Or worse, you try to research them and you can't find anything on them. Because there's some there's some relationship podcasts that there's one in particular that is done by a friend of mine I used to play softball with, and I don't want to go directly to that friend because I wanted to research it, but I can't find anything on to research outside the clips that are on Facebook, and I'm like, I can't find you. Mm-hmm. So I got other things to do moving on, right? So things like that will keep it out. But for the most part, if they're telling a story through any sort of Baltimore lens, looking forward, looking backwards, whatever the case may be, join our podcast network. To see the dirty little secret. Maybe I shouldn't say this, but it will be monetizable at some point. I've already talked to people about how to monetize it. But you need to gather all these voices together, because a podcast with 100 to 500 listeners isn't going to get you much. But if you have 10 podcasts with 500 listeners, now you're talking, right? So that's kind of the thought process there. And ironically, our web managers put up 5 new podcasts today. So, and what I found shocking when I presented at PMDMC is that people were just like, I don't know what you're talking about. This is a room full of decision makers at public radio stations that don't know how to monetize podcasts. And I'm like, and I didn't know my audience well enough to know that I should have zeroed in on that. But I did sell them. I was able to overall sell them the big picture of we all have podcast networks. Do it differently. Here's what I would love to have happen eventually. Water main breaks in a neighborhood here in Baltimore. Floods out something important to everybody.
Mm-hmm.
But it's not something that we make news other than just a blurb. But the podcasts are starting to really hone in on it. And through our podcast network, you find details in the stories, and then it becomes a bigger story. That would be the best day for me.
Yeah.
Where it's not necessarily breaking news, but it's used as kind of
a springboard.
Yes, and a springboard to a bigger story. This town has had a whole lot of stories that start off really small, and I would love for someone in our podcast network to say, hey, I have this story. And then they email me and say, you might want to listen to episode 131 because it's relevant to what's going on down there. And then we can have that person almost like a correspondent. It's basically the AP model from 1865 or 1869, which was stringers.
Okay.
Yeah, that's how AP kind of got started. They had stringers everywhere, writing stories and transferring them across the technology of the day, which I think was telegraph. And that's how Associated Press became Associated Press. So it's the same. Nothing's new again. It's just different technology. And I'm trying to kind of recreate that on a smaller scale.
So you mentioned you brought up the students, and I really appreciate you. No, that was good. No, because it's you mentioning the students or us having conversation around the students, and WEAA being a learning lab. Do you want the students to learn your side as well?
Oh, 100%. 100%. A few professors have had me in classes, and the first thing I tell the students is, if you figure out where the money's coming from, you figure out where the jobs will be. I know that the glitz and glamour of being on the air is very intoxicating. It's addictive for some people. They have to give their take, right? I get that. And I know the kids come in here with stars in their eyes. I met a freshman earlier this week who was super dynamic. Stars, right? I'm not saying they should learn my side of the business so they can be on my side of the business. I'm saying they should learn my side of the business for their own self-preservation, because I've watched reporters especially change their philosophy about what they're going after based on the fact that their newspapers weren't selling well. And what I mean is, once clicks became a thing, they could track their popularity, and therefore their clicks were how they got that gratification, right? But they also knew that the more clicks they got, the safer their jobs were, because those clicks turned into money eventually. We can get into that, but that's technical. But yeah. So, and these are guys who, the one guy who I can't remember his name, but he was really cool to be around. He was really funny too. I started watching him in we do these town halls in McClatchy, these kind of sit downs in the middle of the office. And every meeting he'd ask about how the money's going. And I knew it was just out of fear. He knew what we all knew would eventually come, which was layoffs. And I'm not saying you should be a journalist and think about whether or not this is going to make money. That's the wrong approach. But if you know that you should know that this person is an advertiser before you do a story on them and what that means to the station. So you still do the story, but you give your general manager a heads up. Hey, Bob's auto shop down the street has a scandal, and I'm going to write on it. You might want to call him and warn him, right? I'm still the story's being put out in 5 minutes. You can give him a heads up. That happens now. People don't realize it, but it does happen. And Bob will mobilize his response, and may not know about the scandal, whatever the case may be, but he'll learn about it. He'll learn about it only 5 minutes before everybody else. Like, just that little tiny approach allows you to come back to Bob and Bob not feeling like he got stabbed in the back, right? So, a lot of media outlets didn't do that before, and I think they're doing it now. And I think we're not there yet because we're public. But commercial, yeah, they figured that out a long time ago. That sometimes you end up biting the hand that feeds you, so you might as well tell the hand, hey, here comes a bite. Prepare yourself. So, yes, and students should learn that. Students should learn that the journalistic principles come first. Content is king. I tell everybody around here, they don't seem to believe me, but I tell everybody, and I've said it since day one, I will not get in the way of content. But you also have to help me. Because if someone wants to talk to host, insert name here, and that host wants to talk to them, I'd like to talk to them before they get on air. That's it. And say, hey, by the way, this interview is going to be good for you. This is going to be good for your business. Because then we do that. We talk to small businesses all the time. And I'd like to say to them, I want to think about doing some underwriting to hammer home this message later. It only makes sense. You're going to do this interview. The interview will be had. It'll live online. But if you do some underwriting, yeah, people can find it and revisit it, and it'll help your business. And it helps us too. Let's help each other, right? You're not going to get the interview because you're underwriting. You're going to get the interview because the person that's running that show, whoever that might be, thinks it's good content. But there's an opportunity there to follow it up, with some spots. So the students, I think if the students learn those little tips and tricks, they can make friends on both sides of the aisle, so to speak, which will be self-preservation. The people who, it never fails. The people who get laid off first are the ones who don't bring in revenue. The people who get laid off last are the people who bring in revenue, whether they're revenue generators or not. That's kind of the American way.
Yeah.
I got laid off from AP. I got laid off from McClatchy. I was always one of the last ones. I got laid off from CBS Radio. Why? Because they were being sold to Odyssey. I looked up one day and there were like me and 2 other people there. And I was like, whoa, what just happened? And they never told us. They were just systematically taking people out and they'd make up excuses. Hey, you had a down month. You got to go, Desmond. And I was like, really? It's a slump. I can produce. I'm sorry, you got to go. 2 months later, we've been sold to Odyssey. I had a big salary. That's what they got rid of. But they couldn't say that because they didn't want it to get out there. They were going to be sold. Managers were still there. 2 of the salespeople were there, but they had been there for 25 plus years and were making way more than bringing in way more than I was bringing in. But the people who brought in less than me, they were gone. I was one of the last ones, and that still stinks. But it feels a little bit better when you're like, all right,
I did what I could.
Well, I was one of the last holdouts, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. So, same with AP. Yeah. 22,000 layoffs in 2011. No, 2010. Being in mid-2010 to 2011. I got laid off in 2011. 22,000 people, and I was one of the last ones. And I'm like, all right, I can take that. Yeah. So, it happens. This media business changes. You got to keep up with the changes. But the one thing that doesn't change is media makes money, and you have to make money. So I would love for them to learn more about my side of the business.
And speaking of making money and them learning, kind of circling back to the underwriting process, do you ever feel like you're competing for underwriting?
Yes. The problem is you don't know who you're competing against. Because we are so unique in our programming, it's not like we're competing against the other talk station across town, or the other R&B station across town, or the other station that plays jazz. Like we're competing against all of them, and dollars are limited a lot of times. Every now and then I can figure out why I lost something, but the real cool thing is when I figure out how I won something. I took a big client from another station, and after a while ago, I was like, hey, we were paying a max amount of dollars a year. Give us a schedule for that amount. And I was like, well, you got it. So they left that station and came to us, and they were with us for I think 2 or 3 years, well, 3 years, and almost 3 years, and I kept trying to redevelop it and grow with it. Talk about students being involved. I had a student. It became a Q&A sort of underwriting approach. So it was a donut, right? You know, donut is a message wrapped around information. So we created the donut, and I had the students doing the Q&A. So it felt like every summer, but I'm sure it wasn't that frequently. But it felt every summer I would bring in new students to interview for this role, and the students loved it. You know, they loved that opportunity, and I let the underwriter choose who he felt like he had the most chemistry with, and the students would interview. And once a month, it got to the point where I didn't have to do anything. It just come full circle. He meet the students there. I'm like, hey, he came in and didn't say anything to me, but they would go and they record, and I just get the audio files afterwards. But I had to compete against another station. To answer your question, I got off topic. I had to compete with another station, and we won it because we had that, because of that little element of let's get students involved, which will be a big part of what I do moving forward. Is I have to find ways to get more students involved. They are our secret sauce because they have great ideas, they have great energy. They're not timely. They're not. They don't take it serious yet. So that's my job, is to get them to do that. Some of their work ethics aren't quite set, but I get it. They're like 20, 21, and there are more important things on their mind. And if I'm doing this well, then they sense the importance, right? It's hard to be hard on some of these kids because they're kids, and then once they're no longer kids, you know, it's kind of after that's when they get the point, right? So I think they're the secret sauce to our competition. It's the one thing that we have, no other station in the city has, which is that youthful energy, that youthful creativity and mindset. We have to just hone it. So yeah, there is competition.
So WEAA is really unique in that it is a public radio station. It is situated within an HBCU. It has the secret sauce of the students. What about, or what is important to you about WEAA?
It sounds a little hokey given what you do, but the legacy. And the reason I say that is because we just made me go full circle. I know what radio meant to me, right? And growing up, it was wallpaper to my life, always there. There are plenty of people, WEAA will be 50 in about a year, and there are plenty of people who have lived their whole life with WEAA, right? And they every time I meet someone and they find out I work at WEAA and they're familiar with the station, they name somebody I've never heard of because they've listened so long. They were listening in the 80s. I'm like a teenager. The show was on. Oh yeah, the show was on in '87. I was like, I was about to graduate from high school. Like, you know what I mean? So it's just, it means so much to the people. Once again, the audience. That's what makes it important to me. Is I feel like I've been handed the keys to the kingdom to protect the kingdom, and to make sure that on my watch it gets better, not worse. I've done it a few different ways. We can get to that too, but I do want to get to that later. But the first thing I think I said to Wickham, I think it was Dean Wickham, when he interviewed me, is my number one priority is to protect the license. It's always been that's my start off line at every radio station. I have to protect the license. Mm-hmm. You lose it, you don't get another one. When you have students, they can get you there. When you're a public radio station and you're breaking FCC laws, it's a big no-no. People around here get mad at me when I check them on things that can jeopardize the license. They get the message. They just didn't want to hear it because, once they hear, hey, you made a mistake, I usually don't correct them. I try not to intervene. Once again, I try not to get involved with content, but I will say, hey, what you're doing, here's the statute. Quick story. I told you I started December 2nd, 2020. No one was here. It was COVID. There was the station manager at the time, myself, and our web manager, Macari. Because Macari started a couple weeks before me. And the place was a ghost town. No students. Everybody was virtual learning. And I read the FCC folder that needs to be updated because it was written in 1983, cover to cover, because I had nothing else to do. Because I was new, and they couldn't really train me because they couldn't be in the same room with me. Mm-hmm. So it was just like, you have to. So then I spent the first 2 weeks, just reading all old proposals, old rate cards, old memos, because there were, like, I had two file cabinets full of old papers. I've since digitized them because I was like, somebody's going to want this. But that's when I said, we have to really, really protect, because I never thought about it from that aspect. But luckily, COVID gave me the opportunity to actually learn a lot about the FCC, and now I can refer back to things, and I can Google search for things that I know are there to find a page, that sort of thing. But yeah, we're not as bad as other stations. Mm-hmm. There are a lot of stations that just don't know the FCC rules and don't know that they're violating them because they haven't read the book. I read the book. I don't remember everything. I'm not a genius. I don't remember everything, but I do remember some things that I thought were like, I didn't know you couldn't do that, right? So, I forget how we got there, but yeah, to me, it's always about protecting the license. How do we get there?
We were talking about why,
yes.
The legacy.
Yes, I don't want to lose the license because that's the legacy. To me, that's the most important thing about WAA. The people who come through here, some of them have gone on to be rich and famous. Some of them have probably not did something else, but all of that's part of the story. Yeah. Now I'm a part of the story. I've been here 5 years and I've done things that they hadn't done before, which is what I was going to talk about. Right?
No, go.
So one of the things I'm most proud of, the podcast network will be our fifth. No, it's our fourth new line of revenue. It hasn't created any revenue yet, nor has the fifth one, which is our WA store. Mm-hmm. Created that literally like, I had Macari posted it like a month ago. So of course it hasn't made any money yet, but I was like, just in time for holidays. We have a licensing deal with one of the local coffee vendors. So that's a sense of pride. I
bought 2 bags.
Yeah.
I bought 2 bags.
Thank you. Thank you. I appreciate that. And you can buy it online. So that's the key. It's like a lot of people buy it online. So that's why it's always front and center on our website. That was another line of revenue. I've created new lines of revenue. They're all small right now. My goal is to be able to move to a place where I can really like put some muscle mind behind it, or maybe even have some students working on each line to try, because I would love to license more. I mean, Dr. K now has a brand of ice cream. I tried to get the same ice cream company to do a WEA flavor, but they couldn't do it at the time. Then they came back around and asked Dr. K, and I was like, okay, we can do that. But it's not art, but it's not ours. It's Dr. K's, and that's fine because she talk about you can't tell a story of WEA. You can't tell a story of WEA without her. So her having an ice cream flavor is like us having an ice cream flavor. So that might become the next line of revenue for us, because we're gonna try and figure something out there. But just I keep trying to create new lines of revenue, so that as precision packages become real, and we have to shift and pivot and find new ways to bring in money, hopefully we'll have streams. And I said when we first got together and we met as a staff, I guess this was 2021 because we couldn't meet before then. The first thing out of my mouth is I love passive money. Money that I could just set up and go. The monthly sustainer program. Those people love us enough to give every month, right? There was a monthly sustainer program before. I put twists on it and spins on it and revitalized it. It's tripled in a year and maybe 5 months.
Mm-hmm.
It's tripled in usage. My business manager was telling me, like, yeah, you're trending towards real dollars from and this was before the last drive. You're trending towards real dollars now. And he told the staff that it's working. And then we had a fun drive, and it just and we tied the party to it, and it skyrocketed. So now it's becoming a significant amount of money, enough to pay a salary, or two. So if we can continue to grow that, we have to grow the audience to grow that, but if we can continue to grow that, it will be a big deal.
We've touched on so much. Oh no, it's good. It's good. No. But you've given so much information on yourself. You've given so much on WEAA. I want to ask, with the HBCU Radio Preservation Project, how do you see the importance of us preserving these stories at WEAA?
In my mind, if I'm just having a radio fantasy, right? Let's say it's 2075, and someone wants to know what was going on in 2023, and they're doing research, however you do research in 2075, and they stumble across WEA as a concept or whatever, and then they go and listen. You guys are going to be writing our history book. Not just WEA, but all HBCU radio stations, because who knows if there will be HBCUs in 2075 or what, we just don't know what the future holds. But we do know that libraries have been around forever. So a library of WEA thoughts, sounds, voices, conversations, interviews, change, community involvement, community engagement, it's all there. It's all there. And if we continue to save it, somebody somewhere will get an idea that will, from what we've done, to do their own thing. And that's kind of how societies are built, right? Like, first you have a wheel, and then you get two, and you're like, hey, I can put a chassis on this thing, and before you know it, you have a car, right? Like, it's just, to me, that's how I think we're the building blocks of whatever the future holds. And we may be tiny, we might be a sliver in the building blocks, but I'm okay with that. It's just, I sound really real sciences and mysticism. I sound real earth, wind, and fire, but yeah, that's my that's my hope, is that all this is for naught. Like I come here, I live an hour away from here. I come here 2 hours of commuting every day, and I don't mind. I did go buy an electric car because the gas was killing me, but if I'm putting forth that effort and dragging myself in here all the time, sometimes 6 days a week, sometimes 7 days a week, and it's for naught, come on, man, what am I doing with it, right? But if I told a student, when you graduate, invite me to your graduation, because if you invite me to your graduation, that means I made an impact on you, right? And she's like, all right, I got you. Now, will she? We'll see. But that's why we're here, is to make impact, not necessarily on students, just students, but on the people who listen, the people who are next to the people who listen. The best way to do that is to have it around forever. Not just the station, but the things that the station has done, has said, recorded, and putting it into modern day history books. You guys are writing our history books. You're like scribes in the caves with the papyrus, right?
Yeah.
That's your modern day. To me, that's how I see you, as a modern day version of that. So when I was told about the project, I thought, this is a good idea. And then I thought, that's going to be a lot of work for me. And it wasn't. It was just a little bit of work, not a lot of it. So I appreciated that. As my schedule, like I said, my schedule gets kind of wonky, but the simple fact that somebody cares about preserving this, and not just, like I said, not just WEA. A&T's radio station is fantastic. WCSU in Central State, middle of Ohio. Great, absolutely. I listened to that every day for a while. Another public HBCU radio station. There are so many of them. I could keep naming them, but I don't want people to tune into them. So, because there's one right now that I listen to a lot because it's just done well. I'm a Radiohead. It's just done well. KTSU. I'll say them because Ernest is the man. So yeah, there's so many of them, and you guys are preserving the journey of kids like me who didn't know they wanted to be in radio, right? You that helps preserve that, so that whatever kid is whose mother is making him wake up to listen to Chris Brown or whatever to clean on Saturday mornings, and he's gonna hate Chris Brown for a little while and then fall in love with him again. Whoever that kid is, like, if he decides he wants to be in radio, he might stumble across what we did here and go, oh, coffee. Well, get a brand of coffee. I don't want to be on the air. I'll get a license deal for coffee. So that's how I see that, right? It's just, writers of history.
We appreciate that. So, closing out our interview, what is your one grain of salt you want to leave?
Leave Earth? WEA? Like,
in general.
Oh my goodness. This is gonna sound morbid because you said leave. I've told my wife, I don't want a traditional funeral. I'm going to put in my will. I said, you spend 5 figures on funerals. So take that money, rent out a place, and force everybody who shows up to tell a story about something I did that made them laugh or fed them good food, because this is one of my hobbies. I said I love to create stuff. Food is one of my hobbies. If I've never made them laugh, if I've never given them good food, they don't belong in that building. One or the other, because you can't feed everybody. You can't make everybody laugh. So, but I can do one or the other. So that's what it is. I think those two things create happiness. So that one grain of sand or salt or whatever it would be that I made somebody happy. That's pretty much it.
Oh, thank you, Desmond.
My pleasure. Sorry about being so long-winded, but I think that makes your job.
Definitely makes our job it makes our job easier.
Yeah, I could have just been like, oh, yeah.